Orks winning 2 GTs, having the third most win events all overall out of all factions. Welcome to the rise of the Green Tide. Whoa! We're back with the stats and the facts, baby. So let's go over the Greenskins. So, like always, we're starting with the facts. We like to go over. This is from Meta Monday. Look at how the Orks actually did this weekend and overall since the post data slate. So, as you can see with the Orks right now, we have a 52% win rate since the data slate and 10 wins. So that is actually third place overall, as I said, for winning events. Just bam. Orks are pretty much looking like the third most powerful when it gets to potential, right? We'll talk about that with event success. But as you've seen over the weekend, they had a 45% win rate, meaning that, yes, they peaked out at the top doing very well, but they also had some floundering. 39 players, as you can see here. That's actually not bad. I've actually enjoyed seeing more and more Orks becoming used and played. Somewhere before the data slate, they really weren't as played as we would like them to see. So I'm really happy to see that, to be honest. And like always, we like to go over the faction matchup. So this weekend, the Orks did win 2 events, but we like to see what factions, and this is from Goonhammer. This is Goonhammer Stats. I like to go look over the Mission GT pack from the dates 9/15 to 11/20, so we can actually see how the Orks do faction by faction. I think that's actually very important, usually overlooked. So something that's not necessarily our predators, but more challenging matchups would be Astra Militarum. I can see that as totally for several reasons. One, indirect fire, super powerful in Warhammer 40k, especially if it's damage 3. Going into armies like the Orks, where you don't have great armor saves, especially. Anything that they decide to target is usually just getting taken out by their indirects. They have plenty of fodder and chaff to gunk us up and get in the way. They regen their sentinels. They get more hunter killer missiles if they have to. Their tanks are actually not super easy for us to kill unless we're utilizing dev wounds. Other than that, they have a bunch of great armor saves. It's not great trades. So Astra Militarum actually do quite well, and they do fix secondaries a lot. Another army that we should just keep an eye out for is Space Marines as a whole. Black Templars can be a challenging matchup. Everybody knows how they're powerful. They take advantage of the Iron Storm detachment, having slightly better vehicles because they get a bunch of meltas. Overall, the ability when Marines are able to combine arms, right? When they're able to actually shoot and then also engage in combat is when you really get the most out of Space Marines. So a lot of the times you'll see these melee kind of sub factions end up helping them push them over the top of being successful. Something that I want to point out that isn't necessarily a hard matchup is actually Chaos Space Marines. So Chaos Space Marines might be a meta bully, and yes, at the very, very top tables, Chaos Space Marines can crumb. But when you're talking about as a whole going into Ork community seems to handle them. It's because Chaos Space Marines are kind of like a very elite techie army, and Orks can kind of overwhelm them. So I just want to point that out. Don't lose hope just because Chaos Marines are doing good against everybody else. Death Guard is one of our other challenging matchups. An army that can combine -1 to your weapon skill and then -1 to hits with the Nurglings is actually very important, very annoying. They have a bunch of armor. They like to bring drones. Sometimes they'll bring in knights to have as their allies. Sometimes they'll have, obviously, a lot of times they'll have plague burst crawlers and indirect fire as well. It makes them very strong. You see Rhino rushes coming into play. So all in all, Death Guard are actually a challenging matchup for Orks to keep an eye out for. Leagues of Voltan. So Leagues of Voltan, niche faction, but their numbers are coming up, getting played more and more as people are finally like catching up with their hobby lag and everything. But they are hard for Orks in a lot of the ways, right? How you beat Leagues of Voltan is you close the distance on them quickly, don't allow their bikers to come in off the edges a lot. Don't let the Hearthguard fall in where they want, and everybody get the shots off and lines of fire that they want. But when you go into the top tables where people have a lot of the Sagittars and they have a lot of the ability to move block you, and they have a redundancy in their versions of their Terminators, and they really utilize their characters and objective taking and reviving, and they actually become a very challenging matchup because they meet you with screens and then they let themselves kind of chew you apart and take you wave by wave. So Leagues of Voltan is something that as an Ork player you do need to study before you start going into them. Closing the distance is always the best way to beat them. But they also have that weird toughness at T6 too, so keep that in mind. So another faction, Tyranids. Tyranids, you see this fluctuate quite a bit, but it's still sitting at somewhere that we don't like, right? 43% win rate. Whenever they have an army has a entire codex and it's going against just a index, yes, they have an innate advantage because they have more options, more choices. That being said, their options and choices have variety of ways to beat us. So Nexus, with the fact that they can actually put big Norns, throw Norns on an objective, have great OC, have the ability to ignore AP that one turn when you decide to WAAAGH. That's one challenging aspect of the one of the detachments. Another one would be not necessarily invasions fleet, but actually I can see the Vanguard detachment as one of those armies will, if they go first especially, will pressure you, kind of try to keep you in your deployment zone weird way, doing fixed secondaries as you chew through them and their weird little monsters and scoring units. By then they've actually put up the score enough. You see that happen a lot at top table. So here it is there to keep something in mind. But yeah, as Orks, where we're sitting, obviously with our wins, with our percentage win rate, it really does come down to the pilot of the army, the meta you're in, and what you're trying to take advantage of. How much do you care to be a part of the Great Wall? So, like always, we're going to go over some of the best performing lists as we talk about. Keep in mind where you're playing, who you're playing against, the terrain you're playing on, all those things play into factors. The reason we bring this up and we actually go through these is to keep in mind, guys, not so you can copy and paste and try to play any of these lists. It's because it's supposed to expand your mind as to options. What units are being taken? What are the ones that are reliable? What do these people run into when they end up losing? And that's why in these kind of lists today, we're going to go over. I actually picked a couple lists that actually lost, that did very well, but took an L or an interesting loss, because I thought it's interesting to go over that too for us more common individuals that don't go 5-0 at GTs all the time, right? But Tarzan, starting with Tarzan from the great game Gongolia, right? And if you've watched the channel, you've seen Tarzan before. You can kind of already guess what his list is going to be. So let's actually just pull up Tarzan's list. So right here, boom, he calls MSU for you. So right away, Boss Snickrot. I'll tell you right now, that is a solo Snickrot. Yes, a solo Snickrot. They're using him like an assassin. Yes, they are. Putting him in the middle of the table, trying to store secondaries, picking him up, throwing him somewhere in a corner later in the game. Yes, Snickrot is being used as a solo model. I think it's viable for sure. Meta dependent, of course. Do you have the points to give up for that? Are you willing to do that to stop yourself from being move blocked? But we'll go on from there. Captain Badrook in his flash gets. We already know that's great. Nobody's surprised there. Mazrod Scragbag always making his man sell list. Nama Smash Squig, my favorite way to deliver Ed Wapa's Kill Choppa. A pain boss. You're seeing pain bosses being used, tuck in their little tech piece here and there, and you don't even bring them, as you can see here in the battle lines, necessarily brought in a 20-man unit. You'll bring him in a 10-man unit because you're really trying to take advantage of his healing factor. You want him to heal Mazrog, follow Mazrog on the truck, get out, give him a nice little healing, boom. That could be very, very vital late game. And then Weird Boy with Super Cyborg Body. Probably had the points left over, decided rather not die if I roll that one, because it's very likely that I roll the one when I need it, when I don't need to. Like I said, only one battle line and only one truck. My goodness, guys. When have you ever seen lists? How often do you see lists with one truck? Very, very rare. Most likely Flash gets win in there. Right away, what I want to point out, you guys know I'm privy to, maybe, actually Flash Gets might not have gone in there. You could reserve Flash Gets and actually beat the Beast Snag of Boyz and the Pain Boss coming in there to follow Miles, like I said. But let's keep going before I start getting lost in the sauce. We got only one unit of Gretchen here, followed by 1, 2, 3 units of Grot tanks. If you don't know what Grot tanks are, they're a Forge World model. They're a T6 chassis, 4 wounds, I believe. It's not 5. I can bring off the top of my head. They have rockets. Their ability is when an enemy moves within 9 inches of them, they get to move 6 inches away. So they have movement shenanigans. They're fast. They move 10 inches. So they shoot on Grot, so they hit on 4s. Very interesting tech piece. Not a lot of people have these. You're most likely going to have to kit batch these up if you're going to go look for them. But I like that he brought redundancy. I think on the last list we went over, he actually brought a 6-man unit, and this time he brought them all into small 3-man units. 4-man units. And what I like about this is you have a separation of the wounds, right? Ablative wounds. Instead of it being a 150-point Ork vehicle that can get hit with the Gladiator Lancer and sniped out, you put all that damage in just one little Grot tank. You understand? That's why ablative wounds in itself is is powerful. Having a separation of wounds within one unit is very strong when you're getting points effectiveness. Of course, one big unit of Squighog Boyz for that Squighog Knob and Edwop skill chop it, and then 2 3-man units, Squighog Boyz, my favorite skirmish unit, and then 2 Storm Boys, the honorary, always scoring, always necessary Storm Boy units. So keep in mind this list does have some movement, right? Each Grot tank unit moving 10 inches, the trucks moving, the Weird Boys moving, WAAAGH, of course, moving out, Squighog Boys all moving out. Nothing here is really that slow that we're looking over. Besides the Grots, of course, Grots. And then you have a little weird boy, and you have a Snickrot running around and jumping all over the table. What you think about that, right? So you have Snickrot doing it once and stopping people from stuffing you in your deployment, and then you have your weird boy out there to jumping around doing it all throughout the game, and then Snickrot may be doing it when he has to possibly survive a little longer since he's a little tougher. So I actually like this list, and MSU for you is what it's called. I like that name. Let's go over some of his matchups you get. So boom, first going into Death Guard. We already know what Death Guard do. Biologist Putrefier. He gives them lethals on 5s, them being the Space Marines, and then he has a free grenade strat. I believe that's the ability. So, and then he allows you to throw a grenade twice, essentially, because you can use his ability that allows it for free, and then you can pay for it. So very annoying. Lord of Contagion with Deadly Pathogen. I believe that enhances his contagion range just innately. Tallyman, and then Typhus. Typhus is a sleeper, super annoying unit for Orks. It's because he could pick the contagion, -1 weapon skill, and then Typhus is already one of those units that has a built-in -1 to hit. Boom. On top of that, Typhus does mortal wounds. Very annoying. 1 brick of Plague Marines right here, most likely for the Biologists. 2 small man units, and then another big unit. So for each of those characters, getting their Plague Marine unit, then Rhinos, 2 Rhinos with the Rhino Rush, a Death Shroud Terminator brick, another Death Shroud Terminator brick, 2 Mephitic Blight Haulers, and 2 Crawlers. So there's no Mortarion. There's people in the Death Guard community, as I'm gathering information so I can make a counter video as to how to combat and deal with Death Guard. They're kind of stuck between, do they want to do vehicle rushes? Do they want to do Space Marine spams? Do they want to do Terminator spams? Do they want Mortarion? They're having a couple archetypes. As you can see, this is the archetype that decides not to bring Mortarion. It decides to let Typhus do the most carrying with his Terminator bricks, and he meets you on the line and throws stuff at you and has just enough vehicles to keep contagions and keep touching you. It might not be necessarily world class most meta lists necessarily, but this is a very strong list in many ways. Yes, you don't have to deal with Morty, but you do still have to deal with a lot of interesting chassis. You still have to deal with the odd toughness of the Death Shrouds themselves. This would be a very challenging list to face. It really taking the most out of your list as an Ork player, especially because, as we've seen with Tarzan's list, it's not like he has a unit of Nobz to run in there and try to fight you, go toe to toe with him. It's not like they have a bunch of big Squighog bricks, no gas, nothing like that. He's coming at you with just a big Squighog boy unit, Grot tanks, of course. Also, Death Guard have Call to Flies where they can be -1 to hit and when being shot at. So even if you're not in their contagion range, still able to make him harder to hit. So it really did come down to his ability to do MSU. I'd really like to see a mission that was all in all. So MSU for you coming in with its scoring potential most likely is what that came into play, because as you can see, Tarzan put on 99 points against what would be stats per stat, quite a strong list. It doesn't have Morty, but like I said, it had a lot of the other things that make them strong. So great job there, Tarzan. As like I said, this is one of those things where we wish we had context to see exactly how that mission went and how he got to optimize his MSU. As you can see, these guys give like a little intro to their list. That's really cool and thematic. Very cool of them. His second game that he had, it was a Salamanders type list with the Firestorm Assault Force, Agdrax Agatone. So that's actually a paint. It's not a person. No, I'm just kidding. Captain in Gravis armor. I feel like he's always slept on. That guy like half reduces damage and everything. Very cool. War Tempered Artifice, and then a lieutenant with the Champion of Humanity. So every one of these characters is very useful and vital for the list, but it's not an overabundance in Space Marine lists. Space Marine points put into their characters on a list. So I actually do like to see that. We see 2 big units of aggressors right off the bat with the gauntlets, a big unit of Blade Guard veterans for that combat enhancement. We got the Inceptor squad with the plasmas, another one with the plasmas, three Land Raider Redeemers. My goodness, some thickness on there. Two Scout Squad units. Scouts are amazing for 55 points. Their movement shenanigans, their midborn placement shenanigans with their scouting, redeploying, super annoying. This list, there's no fat on this list. Everything just starts with the deployment of, I'm going to put these units in these Land Raiders, these characters in these units, these couple chaff and deep strike. Here you go, and then these guys coming up to the middle of the board. That being said, if you're playing a list that's MSU for you, you're not going to be able to MSU take everything out. Not be able to take everything out, especially if you're playing with short range flamers. It means they're taking the turn to kind of get into that mid board, start exchanging with you. The Squighog boys and stuff can't kill enough. You still do essentially have to kill Mazrog. But it was Tarzan's lowest scoring gang at 71 points. When you're playing that MSU for you, and you have to worry about, okay, what am I actually activating here? Because everywhere I'm getting overwatched across this table. And if I'm an MSU unit, I'm getting destroyed when I'm getting overwatched. To combat that, what you would do as a player intellectually is, in your mind, in the back of your head, what unit you actually want to stay alive and hope that he doesn't overwatch, right? So you take a second to look at the board and you look at his options, what he might consider overwatching, and you start moving the other options first, hoping you're going to bait him into actually overwatching one of those units. That way, ultimately, the one that you wanted to survive is last, then you can actually move it, right? That way, all in all, you're giving him the idea is, okay, I know you're going to overwatch me, but let me do these options first. And right away, make it seem like you don't really care that he can overwatch you. Let it be known that he knows that you know. But in the back of your head, what you're doing is trying to bait him with that overwatch with an MSU, because your last one most likely should be your last movement from an MSU unit should be the one you actually care about, because you should hope that he engages, kind of like itchy trigger finger, right? You hope that he engages it earlier. So that takes movement shenanigans skills, placement, very high skill ceiling right there from Tarzan to be able to pull that off. He doesn't really have like the toe-to-toe firepower. He's running into Overwatch. He's getting annihilated with MSU units. So that's another thing, man. Very, very cool by Tarzan. Which is interesting, because as we go over some of these other lists, as you guys will see, they're not going MSU for you. A lot of these other lists that are coming out here are actually fighty lists or killy lists. We already know about the Squighog boy list. Tarzan's list is super unique. So going forward, I'm giving him his war boss his little respect. Then his third game, he's going into an Ironstorm Spearhead. We got a lieutenant with combi weapons, another lieutenant with combi weapons. As you can see, no enhancements on those guys. A Tech Marine with targeting Augur Web, another Tech Marine with Adept of the Omnisaya, another Tech Marine with Master of the War Machine, and then Thor Garodon. Thor Garodon is actually a Imperial Fist named character, just so you guys know. Units this guy went with is 3 Ballistus Dreads, 1 Gladiator Reaper, and 2 Infiltrator units, 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, only one Scout unit, and a Caladius Assassin. Just right off the bat, me as an individual, if I'm seeing someone bringing these Ballistus Dreadnought, I'm not really mad about that. I think that's one of the weaker options, to be honest, in this detachment as a whole. Bringing the Ballistus Dreadnoughts is kind of a weaker option going into Orks, at least. The idea behind the Ballistus Dread is that they're more durable to other firepower that's targeting them, as they're more durable than like a Gladiator Lancer, for example, right? But the Gladiator Lancer is so much more reliable. Going into Ork like trucks or just any anti-armor as a whole. Infiltrators are really good if you're really worried about your backfield getting taken up. But if you're already playing this kind of gunliney army and you have stuff standing back there and shooting, they're going to stand in the middle of the table for the Orks, and that means they're going to start getting taken out. So really having more scouts here would make this list kind of take the fat off this list, and make it more challenging for the Orks, because really you're looking at this list and you're going, well, Lancers aren't super, scary to me. The Infiltrators are easily going to be taken out by my MSU skirmishing units. So really it's about those Dreadnoughts and those Scouts that I have to worry about, because other than that, the firepower isn't devastating enough. Thor Ganon himself can be a force of nature, but not that this isn't hard. This is still hard, but I'm saying when you're making a Space Marine version of this list, this Ironstorm list, it's a very elite, no fat can be on this list, because then you start losing your scoring potential, and that's what most likely happened here. Especially if you just take out that Caladius assassin, have a truck run it over, throw some grenades at it, have Snikrot duel him. You know what I'm saying? Just start murdering him. So that's really cool right there. And you can see right here, Tarzan put up 100 points against that list. So when you look at that list and you start getting used to what they want to do when you're playing an MSU unit, what you're most likely trying to do is you're trying to win on all the engagements. When you're playing an MSU army as an Ork player and you're setting that up, you're not going to win their big death ball fights. You're going to go out here and you're going to go, okay, what can you're using this core? Go kill that. It's trying to score. You're trying to score with these scouts. You're trying to score with these inceptors. You're trying to score with that assassin. I'm going to kill all your low scoring potentials, and then I'm going to auto see you with what's left, and then you're not going to score. And then now you only have 2 turns to win, but you're too far behind. You lost. That's how you win with an MSU army a lot of the time. You just keep doing that to them. But it takes a very skilled player. Much easier said than done. So for his 4th game, he went into Necrons. Something that Orks don't really find super challenging. It's annoying. Some missions like Purge the Foe could be challenging. Enough Lich Guard, and it could definitely beat you and catch you off guard, but not one of our challenge matchups. So Overlord with the Veil of Darkness for that kind of instant transmission, teleporting, redeployment shenanigans. Technomancer, and a Catan with one of those super durable Catans, the Transcendent. Crypto Thrall, Death Marks, that's just like their scoring potential. The Death Mark is their scoring unit for deep strikes. Doomsday Ark, Flayed One's another scoring potential unit. Single Locust, I think that's cool that they can do that. More Locust Destroyers, 1-2 with the what are these? Gauss Destructors. So they have Gauss Destructors, more with Gauss Destructors. So they're splitting up their anti-tank fire. You can see that they're teching into the meta that they're going to have to be going into. Lich Guard, Osphidian Destroyers, Tombsblade. So this is actually, in his own way, he's trying to be a smaller, not so bricky, slow, annoying kind of character. Death Guard, Necron army. He's bringing small units like at 100 points, 100 points, 100 points, 80 points, 80 points. The issue is these units aren't winning. Like Squighog boys, they're looking at Tomb Blades and they're like, they're looking at Locust Destroyers and stuff when they get to combat, or if they're trying, when they do close the distance on them, they're like, yeah, right. Most likely these Locust Destroyers are trying to target something else, especially if you can draw their firepower into like Maz, and some guys will make that mistake. You're like, oops, cool, Bram. Doomsday Ark as well. These guys, though, you don't really want. Don't go into this assuming you're going to kill them. They're way more durable than you think. You can kill them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying don't go in there and think willy-nilly, I'm just going to go kill this. You might get lost in the sauce there and stuck. So most likely what you do, Devastate, take your Devastated wound potential. Kill the Catan, of course. A lot of the time, a lot of players will actually just ignore the Lich Guard block. They'll play the rest of the table, kill all his scoring potential, and not let him beat him to the middle. Let him Veil of Darkness to a corner and go ahead and stay there. So 89 points into that win. Great job there. Still tough. It's an interesting. You can see that guy was definitely coming to win, especially this late in the game playing into Necrons. He knew what he was doing there with that Necron list. They had a lot of scoring potential. But last, but certainly not least, is the Drakari. So Drakari, this is going to look like a this is going to end up looking like kind of a MSU face-to-face is what I'm guessing in my head, right? So we got an Archon with the Art of Pain, Cabalite Warriors. So just 6 Cabalite Warriors with 6 Venoms, and then we got Mandrakes, Ravengers, 2 Ravengers, and 2 Tantaluses. So it's a bit different than what some people would have expected. Sometimes you're thinking more Mandrakes and maybe some of their version, what their version being Dark Elder's version of Dreadnoughts with the Chronoses and such. None of that. He said, I'm going point for point, transport versus transport. Here we go. The issue is, when you're playing against a list that has these many Grot tanks, you actually have beautiful little chassis that have the perfect little profiles for popping all those transports, and then you just so happen to have a bunch of little skirmishing units, being an Ork player, that's going to destroy all those little units that fall out of there, and you're winning in the melee potential fights. Yes, you could take over the board and outscore a lot of people, but Orks are the one for those little factions where, hey, if we end up nailing here, we stay alive, make our influence here, we're winning all these fights, we're fighting in death, long story short, you can't take that out enough. And we put up 100 points. So great job by Tarzan. By no means when I'm going over this and giving my assumption of how this guy crumped, am I saying, hey, I could easily pull this off? It means nothing. This is how you play an MSU army, and it would be by Tarzan. So great job by Tarzan. You can see it's a very off-the-wall Ork list. Grot tanks, I'm thinking in my tier list video, I probably could have pumped him up. Shout out about to David because he told me I should have put him up one, and he's right. So shout out to the Grot tanks and Tarzan again. Glad to see you making your way up and finally getting that appearance you want. So for the next list we're going to cover, it was at the Super Major, the 2-day Super Major. Yes, this person didn't end up in the top 10 or whatever, but he did end up in the top 15. Ivan was Warhammer. So before I get into that, let me just take a look into the chat. Let me see what your kids got to say. You said, whoa. That's quite a mighty compliment. I see you guys with your signals, with your little badges. I see you guys out there, you members. Shout out to the members and people that are signing up to Patreon and everything. I love seeing you guys' little emblems. Whoa, you guys are gonna grow up and become war bosses and everything like that. See how you guys going? Black Templars a tough challenge, you guys. Black Templars for sure, a tough matchup. You have to have some AP in there, makes you get through those fights. And fighting death, you have to have good options to fight death too. Death Guard, Royal Pain, especially when they have that -2 to hit in most lists, really sucks. Yeah, compounding that becomes really a great problem. What they don't like as Death Card are mortal wounds, and something that Orks do as a sleeper faction is we throw a lot of mortal wounds at people. So make sure you optimize that too. Throwing mortal wounds at people. Whoa, DJ on my second army. Love them smelly boys. It's because Orks are smelly boys and they're smelly boys. So ultimately, you're just happy because you're a smelly git. Long time no see, boys. Whoa. Are you guys a bit worried about the potential nerf with the next data slate, given the very good performance of Orks lately? Yeah, actually, I do. I think Orks are going to get hit with some points increases. I see Nobz. I see Flash gets going back up. Maybe they'll end up hitting WAAAGH again. Not again, sorry. May suddenly hitting WAAAGH, right? But the thing is that Flash gets and Nobz were already good before they got the points decrease that they received last time. Meaning that even if they take this increase that we're assuming, as long as GW doesn't go overboard, they only increase them 5 points. As like last time they decreased them by about 5 points. Knock them back to where they were. That should be balanced enough. Don't need to go over the top GW. We're not so OP that we're abusing the community, right? As you can see, we had a 45% win rate over the weekend. That means across the what 39 players there were, we were actually majority losing. It's those few outliers that come out, really know how to play Orks, put on pressure, deal with a great way to call the WAAAGH. It's a skill set army, guys. Being great at 40K with a melee army requires great understanding of the combat phase, great understanding of pylons, consolidations. Every single rule in 40K has the line of sight. When I get cover, can I pylon and fight you when I haven't charged you? Understanding all those rules are actually how you become great with a melee army. So yeah, we'll take a increase, but in reality, we don't abuse the meta, so it shouldn't be too devastating. And we can already kind of see what it's coming from. Baby Squighog Boyz end up going up if they're 115 points instead of 110 points, stuff like that. So yeah, great community. You have gotten some great talks with folks about the proper art of crumping. Whoa, that's what I like to hear. Thank you, I appreciate that. That's a big that's a big deal. Big compliment right there. So I see all you gets. Let me keep going. Go back and chat. Yell at me some more. You guys know I like seeing that. Let's go on to Ivan. So Ivan's list right here. Boom. I had actually already pulled up his list. So look over here again. So his just says 2K of War. It doesn't have a name really. So you have Mazrog again. War Boss. 1, 2 War Bosses. War Boss and Mega Armor with Follow Me Lads, followed by a Weird Boy. 1, 2, 3 Ork Trucks, the sweet number. 2 units of Gretchen, 1 unit of Mega Nobz with twin kill saws. That's what I like to see, twin kill saws. I understand. Terrible volume of attacks. Yes, I understand. 2 attacks is insulting. GW better increase that in our codex. That being said, when you are strength 12 with twin length and -3 AP, you are at least very reliable with your wounds, especially into elite enemy infantry a lot of the time. And we really lack with that AP. So some matchups it becomes more interesting than other. And you can see all he did was tech for -AP because here are 2 units of Nobz, 2 of what we like to call the scalpel units, big 10-man units, really interesting. And then he follows it up with 2 big bricks of Squighog boys and then 1 small 3-man unit, 1 Storm Boy unit, and 1 War Biker unit. So this guy decided to bring all the pain. Not a bunch of scoring potential. His Weird Boy is his major quick scoring potential. His Grots are for holding his battlefield. Of course, trucks can always do secondaries. Only 1 Squighog Boy unit to throw away. And then only 1 Storm Boy unit to drop in for deep strike, 1 unit of bikers to run up in with their assault and do secondaries, maybe in corner, stuff like that. Follow me, lads, on the mega Nobz is interesting to me because Nobz are a little bit more of the value unit to me. But he decided I really needed to make up that distance, so it's quite an investment into the mega Nobz. His meta must have been like, I really hate AP and I'm just crumping AP. So let's see what he went into. First game, Chaos Knights. Talking about wanting AP, writing in combat, one Knight Rampager with Palpany of the Cruise Knight. So he had a 2-up save. We had a War Dog Brigand, another Brigand, 4 Brigands, a Huntsman, and 4 Carnivores, followed by 1 Blue Scribe for their secondary potential. So here, guys, I'm going to just guess off the bat. Ork player went first, hopefully. As Ork player, you care to go first and stuff. You don't want to just start taking losses and getting annihilated everywhere. Here, when you're playing against a list like this, guys, a lot of the times what you want to start doing is taking out the Carnival Rampager as soon as possible, not let them charge into your big brick Squighog boys. Really deliver those devastating moves to get over his armor save. They can pop 6 up, feel no pains, but all in all, Nobz, murder war dogs, carnivores, Squighog boys can take on big knights and get stuck in combat as long as you call that wall for that 5-up invuln. Maz can get one shot by the Rampager, but he'd have to spend his whole combat phase kind of fighting him. So really here, it's really about taking out the units that he's going to start running up into the middle of the table and scoring with, but your wall timing is very important as well when you're going against these guys because it is a defensive factor too. These units all have great AP, so if you just sit there and let them hit you without the wall, they're just picking up all the units because they have great damage dealing potential too. So feel no pains are very vital. When your wall potential is offensively, but also really for defensive matters. But having all these units that are great to killy and into armor, like the Mega Nobz actually came into play here. All you need to do is roll moderately hot one time, guys. I know you're hitting on 4, but with the War Boss hitting you on 3s, you're getting a majority of those wounds through, so it looks quite awesome. And remember, the Mega Nobz on the wall do also get devastating. It's not like mind-blowing, but it does help. So this is actually a very competitive list too. So mind you, the fact that he just took all of the Ork combat, went into there and just crumped. I'd like to see the terrain, like I always say, because I want to see how that matched up and who went first and such like that. But that's a very impressive list to be. That list is the type of list that performs, in a top 5 at a GT level and bothers people. So for him to put up 97 points into that is freaking awesome. His second game. So let's see what he ended up losing to. Boom, World Eaters. So you guys know I always talk about World Eaters. I always say they like to do what Orks do, and it can catch you off guard as an Ork player when somebody's trying to do that. They get very similar rules to what we get, but they get additional ones that make it even more reliable, such as they get an auto advance 6 instead of just the advance and charge ability. They get the advanced charge ability plus a strat for auto advance 6. They get strats for +1 to wound. So they want to do what Orks do, but they get like reliable outcomes when they do it. Other than fighting death, that's a roll for that. But when I mean reliable outcomes is they know what stats are going where and what their roll charges are getting, and their abilities. Maybe they don't know every turn, but they can re-roll it, and sometimes they do that, which is what the favorite of Khorne is. So let's go into this. He has Angron, Karn the Betrayer, Lord Invocadus, World Eaters on Juggernaut, World Eaters of Execution. Angron, boom, easily can one-shot Maz. Can take out Squighog boy units, but we can take them out too. Throw bombs in him, stuff like that. The issue is him coming back to life. Karn the Betrayer, he loves, I believe he fights in death automatically. So he just runs around usually and tries to get trades out of you. Lord Invocadus, he's all right. Just that helps kind of get into the mid-table. I'm surprised he actually brought him, to be honest. World Eater Juggernaut, the favorite of Khorne is really just to re-roll their World Eater's dice. And then the Berserker Glaive is really they get about, I think it's like D3 additional damage to the built-in damage. And this guy on his own is devastating. If you're not familiar with World Eaters as a whole, if you let him get into play or any of your Ork units, he's taking out your Ork character and throwing a ton of nasty, devastating wounds into the rest of your units that are like 4 damage, 5 damage a pop. So you don't even want him going into Squighog boys. And if he does, I tend to, a lot of the time when I'm dealing with this guy, fighting in death is the number one key when you want to deal with this, or flash kits. You have a unit of jackals, Khorne berserkers. Mind you, guys, when you shoot the flash kits and they have the Khorne berserkers in there, they get to move because they got a blood surge. And if you're too close to them, they blood surge and they can get into combat with you based off blood surge, based off how the wording is. But these are only like small 5-man units. So actually, not that he has flash gets, but just keep that in mind for the rest of us, right? This is for the rest of our thought experiment. Flash gets is where you devastate something like this. 1-2 units of basic 8-bound. Keep in mind the 8-bound would make some super kind of a sleeper unit. Is there also a not only do they scout and all that awesome offensive potential, they have an aura of reroll 1s to wound, and I believe it's full rerolls if you're hurt or something like that. But they're actually like a support unit too, sleepily enough. Exalted 8-bound, this is their version of big hitting units with rerolling wounds and more damage and such like that. World Eaters, Chaos Spawn, I rarely ever see that. And only one Rhino. So I'm a little surprised. Really, what this comes down to, one, who win first, who wins second, the positioning when they're staging. The issue is World Eaters almost always get the initiative on an Ork player. So a lot of the time, either A, you're giving him units you're willing to not only fight in death with, but units you're willing to lose early. Without the wall, or you call that wall as a defensive measure, still fight in death and hope that your clapback is so strong that you can then countercharge into him and take him the rest of it out with momentum. If Angron keeps coming back, this becomes a very challenging game. If the World Eater's Master of Executions gets into one of your characters too early because of poor placement or a mistake on your end, it gets challenging. And if they end up choosing to fight in death, and they roll a bunch of hot fight and death as well, and they're dealing that for free because they're not using CP and it's on every unit, that becomes challenging as well. So World Eaters, like I've always brought up, Orks don't like to be pressured, and you can any time of the day, any Ork player, a different skill level can lose to World Eaters. We've seen that with Tyler Russo from $1 Billion Cloud Farm. It's just, World Eaters are one of those armies, but they rely on the dice a lot too because they're gods and such. What I mean, but reliable outcomes is with their strats, they get a bunch of reliable outcomes as they get to initiative us. So great job, Ivan, still for showing up and doing great in the game, but it was a loss there. Let's go into his third game. His third game is against the Sisters. So Digilogus, Morgan Val, Palatine, Triumph of St. Catherine. Boom. I guess you're not bringing St. Celestine right now. Sister Squad, 2 Rhinos, Arcoflag. Ooh, he came deep with the Arcoflagellants. This boy came to play with these melee girls. Very good potential with combat with the melee girls. Castigators, this is their version of like a gladiator or tank, battle king, tank. Not great AP, to be honest. You just take cover a lot of the time when you shoot at you. An Exorcist with Hunter Killers, another Exorcist. Paragon Warsuits, pretty awesome. I think they're not like amazing, but they're just cool models and they're pretty good stat wise. Seraphim Squad, just nice deep striking units, such. And then a Caladius Assassin. Everybody has to have a Caladius Assassin if you're a space, if you're a part of the Imperium, right? 80 points right there. I haven't put up against Sisters. They might not be in the most competitive place, but as an Ork player, how you look at it is they want to meet you kind of in the middle of the table and start duking it out with you. And a lot of the time, they're not going to really have the best of those trades out of there. Other armies will do damage from you at range and then try to like move block you and then erode you through time. Sisters don't do that. They don't have nasty range like that. They get close to you and then they end up taking the worst end of those kind of fights. So his fourth matchup, we have Grey Knights. So Grey Knights is the movement fighting. The game becomes the movement game. You're fighting more than you're doing. You do movement more than you're fighting a lot of the time. Try playing against Grey Knights with the chess clock, right? Over the weekend, I played with the chess clock, and I was like, imagine playing against Grey Knights with the chess clock. So like, agitated, like, man, I better get this right. More challenging, and I see that with here is Grey Knights as Orks can beat them because we can occupy the table, we can kill them. We can not, beat them a lot of times with just putting up the score too high for them to kill us. Sometimes our transports are an issue, stuff like that. But if you start making mistakes and you let paladins fall down, Orks do beat you. And I think on the casual level, a lot of the time, Orks beat us. So let's see what happened here. We have Brotherhood Librarian, another Librarian. This is like their mortal wound bombs are also the first ones to help them kill your transport to do most of the damage. Castle and Crow and Caldol Drago. So these guys are there for either A, I'm trying to do more damage, or B, I'm trying to get reliable charges in. Either of them do different abilities. So we got Brotherhood Terminator Squad, followed by another Brotherhood Terminator Squad. One was a big brick, the other one was a small one. A Strike Squad, Inceptors, a small unit of Paladins, a Purifier Squad, Evisaur Assassin, and a Vindicar Assassin. So instead of bringing a giant brick of Paladins, because it ends up being a quarter of your army, a small unit is plenty. You still get good side cannons. You still get good OC, which is nasty to drop within 3 inches of you and steal your objectives as an Ork player. Terminators having Armor of Contempt, super annoying. But when you're going against these units, you do want to close the distance and start killing what would be their scoring potential type units as you can, as they're not moving away from you as much. The Strike Marines, oh, you're the weakness. Oh, the Inceptors, oh, you're the weakness. The Purifier Squad, when they do come down and start trying to devastate you with damage, they are quite devastating with damage. But the right units from the Ork with our stats and profiles can deal with them. Squighog Boyz, WAAAGH, don't really care as much all the time to be taken out by that. Sorry, I jumped to the wrong list right there. But yeah, Grey Knights are challenging, but it really does come down to because of their KG. It's not necessarily always their damage potential. So he did win there. Playing against Grey Knights, though, do your homework, guys. It's not that I'm saying they beat us or we beat them, but you've seen already, based off what we've gone over, they can be challenging. I really do think it comes down to knowing what their potential is and then being able to just be like, okay, I'm going to not allow you to get off those cheeky abilities, and then you're going to get stuck in a fight with me and die. So, again, as we're seeing as the final the final game of the day ended up being against Ducati again for this guy. So we have the Archon, Lilith, Hexprax, Urine Reckhearth, and the Beastmaster. Cabalite War, Witches, Rax. Court of the Archon, Scourges. This is more what I was kind of expecting. Mandrakes, Chronos, 3 Reavers, 1 Venom, a Raider, 3 Ravengers. So there's a Dark Lances, Heat Lance, Dark Lance. This is a bit more what you were expecting, right? A different version of I have a bunch of great anti-firepower tank. As we've seen before, we know transport spams are great as Ork players, right? But when you're trying to match us with that as Ork, it's not great. So this is what we more expect when we're seeing Drukhari. Yes, they still score. They have great units for skirmishes. When it comes to like speed and everything, they're great. Survivability and trades with Orks is not great, and that's why we got 100 points on that guy. Great job by Ivan. Still challenging to beat Drukhari. I'm not saying you can't, dude, but we already know that he's quite skilled player based off his placement, where he did in the other armies he beat going forward, like the fact that he took out Death Guard from the start. So let's move on to the last list we're going to cover. Sorry, before I go into that, let me clarify. Christopher Brown did get 3 and 2, and some of you guys are like, whoa, what? Well, first of all, right away, I want to point out one of his losses. He got 90 points. Come on. 2 is that this was quite a big event, Ramble in the Rovers. It was a super major, and I just wanted to look at a large event and what happens here. This is where Death Guard ended up winning the event, so I wanted to see what happened. Let's look at what happened with players here, who stopped what happened where. So with Christopher, we can actually go over 2 Ork losses, maybe challenging factions that were issues, and also see his success as well before we close it out. But really great success from the Orks, and I love to see the ups and downs and the rise and ebbs and flow of the green tide. So let's see what's going on here. Do you think Squighog Boyz will even get hit even in the holiday box? Yeah, they can still get hit because they're probably going to get hit like in January or February with dataslate, and the holiday boxes come out way before that. So don't forget, Patreon and YouTube members, you're going to get, we're doing a raffle for that holiday box. And, someone's going to get that box. We're going to give it out for the 1,000 membership mark. So, yeah, appreciate y'all. That's really cool, though. This list needs more grots. Every list needs more grots for you. You get. I found it throwing Gaz and Makari in a wagon, send him to the middle of the tape, the middle of the other Ork stuff to get into combat to get those 12 lethals hits. Yeah, and then of course, remember, if you stack that with Unbridled Carnage, that becomes lethals on 5s. So that's pretty devastating as spells. And I like to do that with 20-man units of Boyz. We've seen that successful at big events, stuff like that. Here for the south of the border. Here, Artemis. Whoa! All right, let's get into the last list. Last but not least, just, he had a hard go, but that's okay, guys. These events, going to super majors are already intense enough. Everybody here is a killer that shows up, right, most of the time. So let's see his first game. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at his first game. Let's look at his list, and then I'll allow you to look at his first game. So, Christopher Brown. We got Captain Badrook, Mazgrad, Scragbag, 3 Squighog, Nobz. Boom. 1 with Head Whopper Skill Chopper, and a War Boss with the Power Claw. So we're kicking it back to pre-data slate, huh? No, I'm just kidding. Flash gets 2 units of Gretchen, 1 big unit of Nobz. I love that. My scalpel unit. So this guy's after after Mion Ha, right? This looks like a familiar list we've seen. 3 units of Storm Boys, and then 1, 2, 3 units of Squighog Boys. Followed by 2 trucks, 3 big bricks of Squighog Boys with 2 trucks. So everything here is ready to crump and get stuck in. The only scoring units are the Gretchen and the 3 Storm Boys, plus whatever the truck you get other trucks if they don't get popped. No real fat on this list, and it's pretty much the exact opposite of what Tarzan's list would be considered, right? This is I'm coming to stat check you, run you over with Squighog Boys, scalpel out your problematic great armor save units with the Nobz, lay down heavy firepower with the flash gets, compared to Tarzan's list where he was just MSU for you. I'm all over the table. Nothing's really that devastating. So extremely different list. And we've seen both between this list, the list prior to this, you can kind of ebb and flow where the Orks can be run. So now let's look at his first matchup. First matchup, Demons. Hey, when you're coming in with 18 Squighog Boys into Demons, they're just getting crumbs. So we'll do this real quick. Be'lakor, Lord of Change, Hallex, Hellbane, the Changeling, Nurgling. Flamers for their scoring, 3 units of Flamers. Screamers, that's like a little flying Soul Grinder. So I'm not to be rude here. It's just this is a very favorable matchup for the Orks here. If you're coming in with 18 Squighog Boys and Maz, plus you got the flash gets, plus you got Nobz to just get out there, you're able to just devastate. Of course, the Nurglings with great placement, you put them right where you need them, but that's where something like flash gets come into play. You're like, well, I know I'm going to charge the next unit. Maybe we shoot that real quick. So yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I'm not going to go and explain that because really, 18 Squighog Boys, I expect you to chrome. So his next matchup, 80 points is nothing to scoff at when you lose. So let's see what he lost at. Right, he wasn't just blown out. So right here, Imperial Fist, Iron Storm Spearhead. We got a lieutenant with a combi weapon, Tech Marine. So he's kind of keeping it light, like I like to do as well with Space Marines. Only 3 characters, not very expensive characters. Get every single of the best top 3 enhancements. We got 2 Inceptor squads, small units, obviously just for scoring. They are plasma because he probably wants some AP in case he has to kill something. 2 units of scouts. I think no Space Marine should have less than 2 units of scouts, in my opinion. And then 1, 2, 3 Redemptors with 3 Repulsor Executioners, followed by a Whirlwind. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is very elite. Bunch of Squighog Boys. Can he pop this? The issue is, depending on who went first, terrain as well, of course, every one of these platforms is doing pretty good damage into the Squighog Boys, even if you're not arting his nails. And of course, only one of them can. Of course, you're getting lethals from these guys with their auras. This becomes challenging because the Repulsor Executioners with their heavy lances are picking up Squighog Boys, essentially. Also, those units that you don't have the WAAAGH. And if you're really good, the scouts, right? If you don't have stuff that's going to meet you in the middle of the table, they're going to start move blocking you, become actually annoying. And then he'll use the Inceptors to try to stay alive longer. If you're playing so elite, how are you going to go get those Inceptors as well? That turn, you go end up using one of your 6-man units, Squighog Boys, until 3 Inceptors. Your Dreadnoughts are taking everybody else out. Of course, dice matter a lot. The Redemptors could throw great armor saves, but they're reducing damage. They're taking great armor saves when the Squighog Boys are charging into them. They don't have a beast boss on foot to do more damage. And you can't always rely on Maz to do everything. So this is always, we know this is in challenging matchup. The mission will always come into play. We always know the terrain will come into play. But when you're coming with this much anti-tank firepower into just a big Colossus unit of Squighog Boys, so not all the units are getting into combat when they want to on the WAAAGH. You are able to whirlwind some of their scoring potential units out because he's only leaving the Grots in the background. He doesn't really have extra fat in there. And even then, I don't think he would even use the indirect on the Grot, just saying. You can easily use that maybe for Storm Boys so that you're like, oh, you're a very elite Ork list. Let me try to get your Storm Boys if you leave them on the table. Didn't leave them on the table. Well, you already nails over there. I'm going to whirlwind these guys over here. Flat 3 damage. I can try to pick them up. It's challenging. And when you have just enough stuff to go, here are my scouts in your way, and then my Redemptors going to stand in your way, and all of this stuff shooting constantly doing great damage. and you're just very elite as Ork list, you can just end up taking losses because a lot of this stuff has great AP. Still 80 points though is still a great score, so nothing to scoff at. But we know Iron Storm is tough, and I just wanted to show everybody that too. Like, hey, you know, even if you're bringing just straight Squighog boys or just straight damage, that's not always the answer. That's why starting this off with Tarzan's list was very interesting to me too, because he was reminding everybody, hey, playing for the points, playing for the mission as an Ork player might always be the best place to go. So we got Dark Angels as his next matchup with the Gladius Task Force. Gladius Task Force is still excellent. Still excellent. Biology Future Power with Fire Discipline. That's the same thing as like Bolter Discipline, what it was before. Azrael, Deathwing Strike Master with the Iron Vehement. Lieutenant and a Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. So a lot of these little characters hanging around. Some of them are lone ops. Some are buffing with their shooting. We have Aggressors. Deathwing Knight. Goodness, look at that. Look at quarter of your points in just one big old brick. Hellblaster Squad. Let me make sure I click that right. Right. This is the start matchup. Make sure I didn't mess this up. Hellblaster Squad. Sorry. I was like, what the heck? Hellblaster Squad. This, in my opinion, is exactly where you're putting the Apothecary Biologists. I mean, some people might say, hey, you're gonna put it on the Aggressors. No, I think they're going on the Hellblaster Squad, guys. Inceptors, and one Land Raider Redeemer, followed by Clades Assassin, Eversor Assassin. This list falls into the I have too many Space Marine characters, plus I have a thick, big unit of Deathwing Knights. Now, Deathwing Knights are super challenging for Orks to deal with. But what's not challenging for Orks to deal with everything else on this list, especially when you have all those Squighog boys. They don't have the long-range firepower to whittle you away. They have nothing to screen you with. They're just hoping that the Terminators do everything for them. Of course, they do have potential. I'm just saying for that Ork matchup is not necessarily the worst. 78 points, still a good win. Now, let's see what is also. Now, here, I want to point out, come on, guys, 90 points, and he lost the game. That's because his fourth matchup was against this guy, Jake Gray, who ended up putting up 100 points, and he got number 4 overall at the event. So great job to him at a super major. But that's who the Ork player ended up losing to here, putting up 90 points, but still lost. So shout out to Christopher. It's hard to lose a game like that. But let's take a look at Guard. We know that Guard is actually a harder matchup for Orks right now. It really has come down to the pilot, though. But right here, like we talked about, we're going to see some more weaknesses of the Orks show up behind this list. So Lord Leontis, he gives them a CP every turn, and he allows them to redeploy. A platoon command squad, a tank commander to give those tanks orders every turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of infantry mixed between 4 Cadians, and then 1 basic infantry squad. Then they brought a mortar. It's kind of funny. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 Chimera squad. So most likely maybe one of those infantry units to stand in the back of the table, whatever, and then the rest of them are to get in the Chimeras. Chimeras are pretty great. T9, 11 wounds, 2 OC. You can see they got the multi-lasers here. They have a decent amount of firepower. They're decently cheap as heck. Only 10 more points than an Ork truck. And the infantry going inside is cheaper than Orks. So imagine that value of truck Ork boy spam. So imagine similar here, but it's these guys. Their difference is they're not shooting. They're not crumping. They're just looking to shoot, but really it's about the bodies, right? Orks, you already know that they're going to try to move block your 18 Squighog boys. Well, you're going to constantly chew through one of these guys while the tanks are taking firepower at you. 2 Cyclops Demolisher vehicles. These are these little Forge World like Tonka trucks tanks. They're meant to like be self-destructive like tanks, but the Guard uses them for secondaries now. Lehman Rush Demolisher, 1, 2 Lehman Rush Demolishers. Sorry. Lehman Rush Demolishers. And 2 Manticores. So right here, double firepowering of the indirect for 3 damage. We got just enough tanks between the 2 Demolishers and then the tank commander for that reliable, high damage, high firepower tank fight shots. 2 Scout Sentinels to help with that indirect, but also more move blocking, more secondary potential, more getting in your face, more units that's going to regen. Tempestus Scions. This is a unit that actually surprisingly might be another unit that they're regen because they're going to drop down, do a secondary, you kill them, they come down and try to do it again. And then a Caladius Assassin. So these guys right here, why would they be an issue for Orks? Why? high damage indirect. I'm holding you back every turn while you're chewing through my chimeras, while I'm standing in the middle of the table doing my fixed secondaries. And all in all, they have reliable volume, right? Most of the time, what keeps guard from shooting other armies off the table is that they're low AP, and they're getting picked up in multiple phases. You're going against orks, you're not getting picked up in all those phases, so we're running into your screens constantly. That's the same issue we have with Leagues of Voltan. If you can use that similar kind of like vehicle transport, but also volume of shooting issue, that can mess us up. The difference between them and Drukhari is Drukhari has like T6, T5 transports and vehicles that we can actually pop with our firepower. They have low wounds, so we can throw grenades and Squighog bombs into them, compared to something like a Chimera, which is actually pretty thick and pretty annoying to actually destroy. So, you know, it's crappy and really annoying. That guy was obviously a great player, that guard player, by getting 4th place here. But I just wanted to point that out, that as a player, as an Ork player, we know how the truck spam works offensively, but think about it being used against us and defensively. That's why going for all these death bricks with squigs might end up being outdated now. Even though it's still excellent, still do great. It's just you're going to run into top players when you start doing good, and they're going to try to use that to your weakness. And then last but not least, he's going into Necrons. We know that's not a hard matchup for us necessarily, especially I think if you have like so many Squighog boys, because they're we'll just keep going with this list. So Hexmark Destroyer, we got a Lord with the Resurrection Orb, Technomancer, Catan, 120-man unit of warriors, 2 Crypto Thralls, a Lich Guard, Tomb Blades, Reanimator, a Spider. These are actually these Forge World guys. They're actually kind of cool. And then a Scarapect Heavy Construct for 540 points. My goodness. I've actually seen these too. These guys are actually really cool looking. Check it out. It's just that issue is, yeah, this guy's getting crumped by all the anti-vehicle, anti-monster there is on this list. So really, every orc profile goes great into every data sheet that there is on here, besides the Lich Guard. You can see 98 points put up to that. So great way to end it off by getting a win there. You did some hard, challenging matchups. Christopher, your list is devastating with the damage it does and everything. I'd really like to know what happened there with some of your challenging matchups. Could it be the move blocking, the screening, the transports, stuff like that? I'd really like to hear more about that. So I'm glad we went over it, and it teaches us all lessons of, hey, sometimes people will bring all damage and have great success, and sometimes they're going to armies and lists that have stuff to keep that damage off you, and then they're playing orcs kind of like a zombie game where they put them in rows and, okay, I just blast you, bah, bah, bah. Okay, here's my next unit of screens and I blast you, bah, bah, bah. Okay, now, and that's how people kind of look at orcs sometimes and how they want to beat us. And having a bunch of transports and being annoying like that is one way to do it, if you're not Drukhari and Eldar where they can pop it easily. But if you're something like Chimeras or Leagues of Voltan with their T10 Sagittars, that becomes difficult. So yeah, and then also Space Marines with their new scouts and stuff, really challenging. So let's see. Let me go over these chats one more time before. Sorry, I got to know what that. So let me talk to you Gits now. Go over everything we looked over today, and talk to you Gits. So, sorry guys. Oh, we're here. Whoa, Wicked Joe with the gifted subs. Make sure you grab that. Let me see some war bosses in the chat, y'all gets. You guys got them emoji badges. You guys got them. I ain't see enough of those being used. Let me see them war bosses in the chat. I know a lot of you guys already got the badges. If you don't, you can grab one because Wicked Joe get it. So accept that. Whoa. And let me see some war bosses in the chat with those little badges emojis before I get off. Or a runt might work too. I kind of like the runts. So playing versus Imperial Guard. Does the plating on Rogel Dorntake only affect one model's attack, all the attacks from that unit? Well, let me read the Rogel Dorn just to be sure I answered this correctly. The Rogel Dorn's are actually a pretty good model too. As for how many they're going to bring competitively, some competitive bring a lot. Some bring them often, but wouldn't say they're like the worst thing. Let's see. Once per battle, when an attack is allocated to this model, you change the damage characteristics of that attack to 0. Well, my friend, I'll read this through with you as a fellow war boss. Once per battle, so we know it's only going to happen one time, obviously. When an attack is a singular attack, is allocated to this model, you change the damage of that attack to 0. So the wording of that all makes it seem as though it was a singular damage characteristic. So it should only be once, not for everything. So it's not turning everything for that phase or that turn or from that fight into 0. It's turning 1 allocation. I hope we get Space Marine treatment, new models, codex, points drops. Whoa! Orks are in a good spot overall. I think we should be happy, right, to keep us some new war bosses in mind. Anybody who's been around here and such, you guys already know when we start getting our detachments right now, we can actually utilize, when we get our detachments, we can utilize the rest of our awesome data sheets and our awesome models. Where we're at right now, we're essentially just playing Goffs. Imagine when we can introduce more bikers, when we can introduce mech units, and it's not so like they're not so weak and pathetic. Maybe they can respawn, they can reject. Maybe we get it also advanced in charging. Maybe we get infiltration. There's so many awesome things ways that orcs can commit the WAAAGH that there's so much left on the table for us to do. So this is just the beginning of the rise of the green tide. If we're doing this great, you guys, with just Goff abilities, imagine when we have all of our data sheet abilities plus our detachment abilities and such. So orcs are awesome. Everybody should be happy on where we're at. One thing to keep in mind is AP is still becoming a problem, right? People are still tagging into needing more AP. We're still loving devastating wounds, to be honest, between multiple lists. We've seen that great dev either from the Edwap skill chopper, from Maz, from grenades. Sorry, those are not dev wounds, but mortal wounds. But the beast boss and squiggles, the beast boss on foot, excuse me. Getting damage directly through and ignoring armor, however you can, seems to be very important for orcs with your CP management as well. So keep that in mind too. You can think all damage. You can think I'm going to go, hey, I'm going to meet you point for point and stat for stat, but understand there are limitations to that, especially when you're going to armies that have the potential to screen you or have the skill set of the player to have to do it to screen you. So something to keep in mind that War Boss Tarzan has showed us again for the second week in a row that MSU is good for you. Okay, as an orc player, as a community, we might want to start thinking about that all over again too, right? Instead of how can I go stats for stat, toe to toe with these Iron Storm and all this stuff like that. Hey, sometimes you might not be able to. Sometimes you can. Sometimes they put too much fat on their list and you can gut out their scoring units. But if they have no fat on their list and they're shooting and you're meeting them stat for stat, it becomes hard in exchanges for us. We don't get armor saves. Leagues of Ultan that as well is that they see us as once you're done with the WAAAGH, I'm going to murder you because you don't get great armor saves. But then they also hate mortal wounds as well. Death Guard, they hate mortal wounds as well. So all these armies are hating mortal wounds, they're hating devastating wounds, and they hate that we're MSU. So if you can find a way to mix that all up, very similar but not the same, to as Tarzan did, you could find some success too. But one thing that he did was his Grot tanks were the main twist of that. So keep that in mind, guys. And he had a solo boss Snickrot, something that our community should keep in mind with all these infiltrating units, stuff that wants to move block us, maybe scoring secondaries in the middle of the table early without great commitment or scoring. And then maybe cause the unit to charge into Snickrot, then you can leapfrog. Maybe Snickrot can charge into an enemy problematic unit, challenge a character, wound the character, causing the character to end up dying earlier in the next combat he gets into. There's so many cool, interesting ways that Tarzan could have done great with that list, and that's something that we should all put together as war bosses. And keep in mind that there's multiple ways to play. I love squigs. I bring them. They're on my list. Bricks are very fun. I always told you I bring mine in my Edwapa skill chopper too. But there's more than one way for the green tide to rise. We need to codex streak it. More Darko with new tank buses. Oh my god, our tank buses are freaking terrible. I don't care what anybody says. I hate the models and I hate the data sheet. Yeah, that's what I thought too. But since I'm here in Europe, also known as Eastern Warland, I just thought I'd be sure. Thanks again. All good. I appreciate that. Thank you. I just passed here for casually. Well, casually, hello, Thundercat. Whoa! Let's see. And I appreciate any of you guys that took those memberships. Shout out to Wicked Joe for any of you guys that picked those up. I like seeing that. Thank you for giving me all those war bosses and run herders and crazy stuff in chat. That run herder is disgusting, right? The little emoji. It's the new guy is freaking ugly. If they redo tank buses, we need more units with the rocket hammers, right? That's so sick. I want him to go back to killing himself. I don't care what anybody says. Make tank busters able to quack rocket jump. That's funny. Oh, let's see what War Boss Brandon got to say. For those running squig bricks, remember, you can pile into units you didn't declare as charge targets. So when you get screened by dinky units, remember, you can block base and pile into a different Yes, always keep that in mind in general, guys, when you're playing orcs. Very important because we're a melee army. You can pile in and fight units that you didn't declare a charge into. So keep that in mind for all of your orc combats. That catches so many people off guard that you get to continue doing that. So thanks for shouting that out, Warboss. It's always something to keep in mind too. Grot tanks. Nobody expected the Gretchen evolution. Well, if you listen to that Warboss book, releasing a short soon, hopefully, you'll know that there's a possible Grot revolution happening. Which kind of music do you like? I guess it would be what would be considered kind of like alternative rock, stuff that you would consider working out to, instrumentals, stuff like that. The Red Gobble arises, and he does. So let you guys know for the last time before I log out. For those who are members, I love you, I appreciate you. But we're also doing that. We did secure a box set, so we're going to be giving that out for the 1,000 membership, and then also we do have the Patreon for those guys that can't do it, so you will also be included into that. So I love y'all. Thank you for subscribing, for helping us get better. I'm reaching that 1,000 marks. Crazy to think of because the rise of the green tide is real, and we're all here for it. And so more content's coming out, guys. So I appreciate you. Mind you, I'm putting videos together, gathering my information of what we can do to combat these more problematic matchups or detachments. So every Friday going forward for a while, at least, we're going to be doing matchups. We might take one off here and there like we did Legends last week or whatever, have a fun topic. But all in all, we're going to be starting going into some tactics, these problematic matchups. I'm looking to get into Tyranids a bit more. There's a very good Leagues of Voltan player near me I want to kind of beat up on. So we'll see how that goes. All in all, though, we need to do more hobby streams too. So hold me to it. I appreciate you guys in the Discord letting me know that you guys appreciate that. We're going to get that set up too, even if it's not with David, but yell at David because sometimes he, is a busy little git. It's on giveaway. Yeah, the giveaway is international. You're a member or a Patreon member, you're going to be put in the raffle. And then if you're the number 1 supporter or the number 2 supporter, you get more placements in the raffle for the box set, but it's international. I don't care where you are in this world, you are getting that box set sent to you. And I will come in the box and jump out. No, I'm just kidding. I'll send my teeth. No, I'm just kidding. That's weird. But we're going to get it to you no matter where you're at. So we appreciate you. All right. So that should be everything, guys. I'll see y'all on Friday. I appreciate you. Don't forget to sub and we appreciate all the love. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind. Don't cross a wall because we knock your teeth out. Whoa!